now we have Susan Markus, beef research scientist with Alberta Agriculture and Forestry. And Susan, we're talking innovations in feed efficiency when it comes to beef cattle. You've talked about a number of them here at the Western Nutrition Conference in Winnipeg, starting with selecting based on RFI. Can you explain what that means and how producers can practically implement that?
Sure. RFI, which stands for residual feed intake, is just really a measure of the animal's expected feed intake minus from its actual feed intake. So what we have is a ranking then of numbers that were tested for this. And those animals, it's like a golf score. If they're negative, meaning they eat less than what we expected, then they're considered feed efficient. So it's a trait that's moderately heritable, so we can select for it and make genetic progress.
So this is versus the traditional way of selecting based on feed to gain ratios?
Right, so if we only selected on feed to gain, and we've done that over a number of years, we tend to get a larger animal because bigger animals eat more, they're larger, they eat more, and then they'll cost us more. So overall, as far as feed efficiency, we haven't made the progress by looking at feed to gain only. The other thing about feed to gain is it's usually a pen average. So we can't make genetic progress with a pen average because the average is whatever it is, and then we've got animals that are above that number or below. And so we want to make sure we can select the animals that are on the positive side for feed efficiency, and an average doesn't do us any good.
So how can a cow-calf producer practically implement this on their farm in terms of knowing the RFI of animals, or how do you put this into action?
Yeah, so put it into action because once we have enough animals tested, obviously we can use them in our herd, but the practicality is it's expensive to do your own on-farm test. The equipment just isn't at a level that a cow-calf producer would maybe purchase it. So what we can do is we can purchase bulls because it is a marketing advantage to have a feed efficiency ranking on a sire that's offered in a bull sale. We can do that. We can take other genetic, use other genetic tools, ear punches, do some DNA analysis. There's other tools that we can get at some of the numbers or some of the markers that are found in this trait for feed efficiency. Everything costs, right? So the easiest way really is to purchase a bull that we're going to breed to our females, and then because it's moderately heritable, we can select those progeny as replacements or do whatever we need to do with them after that.
And it's important that RFI testing measurement is done in the environment that the animal will be spending its time.
Yeah, that's really important. So if you're picking a terminal sire type bull, well, he's probably going to be tested on a higher grain type ration, and that would reflect how his progeny would do in, say, the background of your feedlot situation. If you're going to select a replacement type bull, because you're breeding for females, then that animal is probably going to be fed on a forage type ration to reflect its feed efficiency on forages, which is what we want. And so it's real important that you test the animal under the conditions for which it's probably going to live.
Moving past RFI to the next item on the list of ways that we're seeing innovation in feed efficiency, you talked about the gut environment and how we're improving the understanding of what's actually happening inside the animal's gut.
Right. So I mean, the rumen is quite a complex, fermentation vat, and because we've selected for RFI, we've looked at those animals, the ones that are efficient and inefficient, and found differences in the population of certain microorganisms. So knowing that, there'll be more work done on sequencing some of those, but that might lead in the future to being able to, say, vaccinate or add a feed additive to ones that don't quite have the efficient gut, bacteria, or vice versa, culling the ones that we know don't have it, or maybe they do better on a forage type ration versus the grain, and sorting them that way. So there's lots of ways we can manipulate that knowledge once that research goes a little further, but we know it does exist. The feed efficient ones have a different population of microorganisms than the feed inefficient ones.
So that's another characteristic that we'll look forward for in the future?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's things that, and with ruminant nutritionists being able to develop products and additives, maybe there's something that can be done, cost-wise. If it's profitable, that's something that could definitely be adopted in the future.
And diet formulation is another...
And that's another area, right. Yeah. That's another area. So we've got a cow that's changing as we select for genetics, more efficient, higher producing, productive cows. The the way we've looked at nutrition in the past maybe doesn't apply quite so soundly now as it used to. So that will have to be looked at. Changing the formulation, because these cows are genetically probably superior, we'll use that word, and they are superior in many aspects. It's not just about performance and size and gain, it's about sustainability too. We've got feed efficient cows, and that means they produce less manure and methane, so it really speaks well on the social license.
And then going back all the way to the beginning of what we feed our cows, actual crop breeding and breeding for digestibility, not just yield when it comes to forages, is it also another improvement area?
Right, because the whole reason we really picked up on this feed efficiency trait is because we have a way now of measuring the inputs. And what are the inputs? They're the feeds. And so these feeds, largely forages, because I'm speaking more from the cow-calf man's perspective. We've got cows under maintenance rations, so we feed them every day. We want that to be fed as cheaply as possible. And so if the forages that we have available to us, if they can be selected for increased digestibility, then maybe we don't have to put higher energy type feeds in the ration to balance it. If the cows are more efficient, we can maybe get by with different resources and make better use of the resources that we have.
So overall, if we combine these four things that we've talked about, what kind of potential is there for improving feed efficiency?
So we're looking at taking the genetics of the cow for feed efficiency. We're looking at the genetics of the plants and getting more fiber digestibility out of those, changing ration formulation and looking at the gut environment. And if you combine all that, we're looking at upwards to 20% improvement in feed efficiency overall in these cattle.
Is that something doable right now?
I think the progress from a scientific standpoint is always faster than when you get on the ranch, and that's just a way it is. We know there's other factors that influence the whole ranch situation. So certainly 5 to 10% I think is doable right now. It's if we can push that 10 up to 20, and that's sort of the focus. Can we get there in the next 5 or 10 years with all these other tools, and there's genomic tools that are being developed and other things they're looking at. So I confidently say we've got 5 to 10% a move that can be made now, and can we go further?
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks for your time, Susan.
You're welcome.